much. Morning again, everyone. So as you've heard at the beginning, we have got a 4-week series entitled Open-Handed Life in the build-up to our next gift day, which is at the end of this month, as we remind ourselves of all that God has given to us and what he calls us to in giving of ourselves back to him. So, the fiver. Here it is. I brought with me a week's wages in the Church of England. And in life, I've discovered this truth about myself. It's that often the way that one lives life is like taking a £5 note and holding onto it and burying it in the depths of your hand and holding on, just in case somebody came along to take the £5 note, or maybe just holding on to it just in case you need it one day because you don't have quite enough money for any bread. We hold on to all those things that come our way in the hope that somehow we'll be keeping them safe and secure out of the way. And yet I think the secret of the Christian life, of following Jesus, is somehow to live an open-handed life with all that God has given us, with all the things that find their way into our tight fists. And God calls us to live life like that. And whilst it might look a bit riskier, maybe slightly more challenging, it is, I think, the secret of discipleship. To live a life that's open-handed and that God's resources that he gave to us in the first place are made available back to him once more. It's the open-handed life that is the call of the Christian. And you notice in that little passage that Martin just read to us and explained so beautifully the context of this passage, it just struck me again, right at the very end of what Paul wrote to the Corinthian church. He said to them this. He said, you excel in so much. He said, you excel in faith. The faith that you've lived as a Corinthian church, it's so amazing to see your faith at work, to see the way that you've expanded and expended yourselves for the sake of the gospel. You excel in faith. You excel in speech. Your sermons are wonderful. They're so amazing. I'm sure you'd be saying the same. I can see the look in your eyes, or the fear in your eyes. Your speech is amazing. The way that you talk to each other, the way that you talk about Jesus, the way that you share prophetic words, the gifts that you use, and the fruit of the Spirit that is born out in your life. It's amazing. He says, you excel also in knowledge, the knowledge that you have of Jesus, the knowledge that you have of your local communities, the knowledge that you have gained in your small groups, in the life groups of Corinth. Paul is saying, reading between the lines. All those things, you excel in that. You excel in your earnestness and in love that we've kindled in you, Paul wrote. You excel in these things. And the Corinthian church, in receiving this letter, must have gone, yes, Paul, we agree with you. We have excelled in all these things. Or maybe they were a bit embarrassed at being called in such a way. And then Paul says this, see also that you excel in the grace of giving. You see, there is a grace in giving. If I think that in this sermon today, or that in the next sermons over the next 3 weeks, that somehow as a result of the amazing speech that you have heard, the sermons that have come in your direction, that all of a sudden everybody will go, yes, Si, of course we will give everything and all that we have for the service of the church and the amazing things. It's not going to happen. It won't happen, not because the speeches aren't earnest or the love isn't there, but actually giving requires grace. Excel in the grace of giving, Paul said. And that means, I think, that there are two things that are required in this. One is giving of yourself, and then secondly, giving of your wealth. We'll come back to that thought in a few minutes' time. Here's the context that Martin was beautifully explaining to us. Here's the church in Corinth, the bottom red circle. And there's the need across in Jerusalem where there was a great famine. Christians and others in those communities struggling with food and just with lack of. And Paul is writing to the Corinthian church saying, come on, we can give into this. And then reminding the Corinthian church that just north of them, in modern-day Turkey, the Macedonian churches, a group of churches all linked together, which included Thessalonica, by the way, that we have a letter to in the New Testament. Paul is saying to the Corinthian Christians, these people from Macedonia, who, by the way, have got less than you, they have asked for the privilege of giving. They've said, here's this need, we want to give to it. They had discovered something of the joy of giving. That when God calls you to act, to move, to give, that he is already at work doing the most amazing thing. You see, giving is by his grace. And then we give. A few years ago at St. Michael's, we asked a group of people about what they enjoyed about giving. I mean, it seems like a slightly bizarre question to ask, doesn't it? What do you enjoy about giving? And here's what people said a couple of years ago. This is where the joy is in our giving.
What I love about giving is that it enables me to live out my faith.
I feel God has been really generous to me. It's nice to give something back in return.
I love seeing our monthly mission partner updates and knowing that I've played a small part in helping towards that.
Giving to God's work here at St. Michael's.
That it's a great way to exercise faith and help vulnerable people, both at home and abroad.
When we give, we are helping to make possible the ministries that happen here at St. Michael's.
But the act of prayerfully giving money away encourages me to look beyond myself, helps me to look to God, and reminds me that everything comes from you, God, and of your own do we give you.
I know the money enables the church to support our children in their walk with God.
That church supports is Kintsugi Hope, which is amazing and it's really, really helped me, and it's also really great that we're able to do it with the youth, and that makes me really happy about giving to church.
What we value, we spend our money on. We're fortunate to live in a thriving parish, and I look forward to that continuing.
It's an adventure. It's a chance to step out in faith with the Lord.
It absolutely reflects God's love for me and reminds me of his faithful promises that we can never outgive God.
What we love about giving, I love that video, just as it described, as you heard people describing why they give. What is the motivation for giving? In a sense, it's all back to this thing about excelling in the grace of giving. As God gives to us, we're called to give back to him. This series has been put together partly on the back of our prayer meeting that we had at the beginning of September, where when we were gathering in here to pray about, 40 or 50 of us, one of the thoughts that popped into my head about us being a generous church was that God was calling us to be generous with people. God was calling us to be generous with our pockets, and God was calling us to be generous in practice. And so this little sermon series, this 4-week build-up to our gift day, is inspired by that thought that God is calling us to be generous with our people, with our pockets, and in practical ways. And as a church, we are entering a new phase of generosity, actually. There are all the ministries and the stuff that we are a part of at St. Michael's, the things that we enjoy being a part of, and those are all entering new phases, new seasons. We're about to graft some people out, to give away some people to another parish in Stapleton. About 25, 30 people who are going to plant into another church, for that to become their worshipping community. And these are our gifts away. You see, what I've discovered is that people are not St. Michael's people or Stoke Gifford people. That somehow in God's economy, he calls us to be generous, recognizing that everybody who knows the Lord Jesus is called to serve him and to go where he calls them to go. And some people have had that sense of calling to go and to plant church into another community, for that to become their church. And one of the things that I felt God say to me is this is part of our giving. This is not us giving away St. Michael's people or holding on to St. Michael's people. This is us saying, God saying to us, be generous. These are gifts away. And we'll be saying and thinking a bit more about that as we build towards Christmas and into the new year, as the church graft happens and begins. And as Vicky and Rob and others lead a team of people, we should be saying, Lord, this is fantastic. Thank you that you call people to follow you. And we will continue to be their friends, their prayer partners, to support all that God is doing in this community. How can we join in with the privilege of sharing in all these ministries? How can we build into all that we are and excelling in the grace of giving? How can we join in with it? It's interesting to me in this passage that when Paul wrote to them, he described the Macedonian churches pleading with Paul and Titus and the others for the privilege of sharing in this service. Isn't it an interesting description of generosity? I know we often think about bank accounts and finances, and we have an amazing finance team, by the way, in the life of the church, many of whom are present. I want to say a huge thank you to you for your hard work week on week, month by month, in looking out for us as we steward all that has come in. How do we join in with the privilege of sharing? You see, it isn't just about bank accounts or £5 notes or amounts. It's about the privilege of sharing. Whether you share a little or whether you share financially a lot, it's all about the privilege of sharing. I've always been struck by people who have very, very little financially, but who give a lot. We'll be thinking a bit more about that tonight if you come back. How do I share in the privilege of sharing? How do I join in with this? I think from this passage there are two thoughts. One is give yourself. The other one, as I said earlier, is give your wealth. Firstly, give yourself. Verse 5, Paul wrote this, and they exceeded our expectations. You see, Paul had expectations about what people might give. And you should hear the discussions that we have in our finance team about expectations of what the next gift day might bring in or not. The conversations about expectations are actually biblical ones. Paul had expectations. And then he said, but they gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and then by the will of God also to us. If you want to know something of the secret of the privilege of sharing, it is first of all to give yourself. It is to know that you are adored. You are loved by God. To go back to this £5 note. This £5 note, how much is it worth? Says somebody from South Africa. £5 note is, of course, worth £5. It's lovely, isn't it? It's crisp, it's new, it smells beautiful. if I scrunch it up, if I screw it up like this, doesn't look quite as good. How much is it worth? You know where this is going. How much is it worth? Well done. Now, having screwed it up a little bit, I'm now going to dirty it somewhat. Across the stage. Across the stage. So you'd be amazed at how clean this stage is, actually. But we're dirtying it up, get all the dirt. There was a conference in here yesterday. Look at that. And it's now, it's a little bit dirty and screwed up. How much is it worth? £5. You see, however much you feel screwed up or dirty, you are valuable to Jesus. He loves you, whatever you think you've done or said or thought, however awful you think you are or far away from him you think you might be, you are valued. You're worth the same. He loved you so much he gave you life. He loved you so much he died for you. He loved you so much he's got a purpose for your life. You are valuable. Don't let anybody ever say that you're worth nothing, that there's nothing in your life. Don't ever let anybody say to you nothing will amount in your life. Don't ever live under that if somebody said it to you when you were little. You are valued. God loves you. He gave himself for you. You have intrinsic value. Know that you are adored. That is how giving yourself to him starts. It knows that you are adored. Secondly, that you are atoned for. Jesus came to pay the price for our screwed upness. He came to say, I will die on the cross for you. I will be alive for you again, so that you know I have the power just to straighten things out somewhat in your life. He atoned for you so that you would not have to. You don't need to strive to put things right. You don't need to strive to be perfect. You just need to accept. How can I join in? Understand that you're adored. Understand that you are atoned for. And understand that you are invited. Jesus said, come and be my friend. In fact, with his disciples, he called them his friends. He said, these are my mates. I hang out with them and they hang out with me. Jesus calls you to be his mate, to be his friend. He invites you in. If you want to know how to join in with the privilege of sharing, invite Jesus into your life and he will give you the grace to give. He'll give you the grace to give. And for those of us that have yet to discover that grace, it is joyful. Those people on the screen weren't telling you porkies. They were telling you their experience. When we give, it's a joy. It's a blessing. It's good for us. It's great for others. And it honors Jesus with who we are. If you've yet to give, don't give because I'm telling you. Give because you will experience the grace of Jesus in doing so. How can we join in? Give yourself. And then finally, how can you join in? Give your wealth. Here we are back where we started. Paul said, you excel in so much, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness. See that you also excel in the grace of giving. I mean, these are tough messages in some ways to give over these next few weeks because we receive, I receive criticism. We don't talk about money enough, or we talk about money too much, and somehow we're trying to find the balance in the middle of all of this. But hear this, it is a calling to give. We're called to excel in the grace of giving. And if you're here as part of St. Michael's, you need to know this. I never know who gives what. You'll be glad. I make a purpose of that. I have no idea who gives what. But what I do know is half the people that worship at St. Michael's choose not to give yet. And that means that our finances are stretched every year. And every year we talk about some of this stuff. If everybody was able to give just a little bit or even a little bit more, God would do so much in the life of this church that would relieve pressure and enable us to continue areas of ministry that we feel called to. Give yourself firstly. But please, think about your bank account. Give your wealth. The starting point for Christians is about 10%. It's not a legalistic thing. It's just what I try to do in my own life. What we've tried to build into our life together is to give something of what God has given to us. God calls us to excel in the grace of giving. Even if you find yourself sitting there and as I speak saying, yeah, but you have no idea what my bills look like each month. You have no idea what the demands are on my finance, my family, etc., etc. I do understand that. I've had times in my life, even when I've been here, where I literally have had nothing in my bank account. Nothing. Cards wouldn't work. Banks wouldn't give any money. Nothing. And yet, as we continue to give, God is faithful. And he said, I'll provide for you. And every single time he has. I understand, but we're still called to give. Speaking with a kid who gets £1 a week, and to hear that they give 10p of that £1 every week into the life of the church is an amazing blessing, isn't it? It's not about how much, it's just that we excel in the grace of giving. So, no doubt some of this will have raised some questions. And I'm delighted that other people will answer them for you. Do you have a financial question today about the life of the church, about some of the stuff that I've said? Why don't you go? Members of our finance team who are here are going to be available. They're going to be standing by a lovely blue banner that simply says giving. That's not an instruction. It's just to let you know where they are. Why don't you go and have a chat with them about something of the finances if you'd like to know more about what's going on behind the scenes? Because we're called to excel in the grace of giving. Give yourself and give your wealth. If you want to hear a bit more about some of that stuff, you can come back tonight where I'm on for a third time running. The third in a little mini series on excelling in the grace of giving. And I'll be speaking about something of that tonight. And if you're here this morning and you've yet to give yourself to Jesus, know that he loves you and he wants you in. He wants you in a friendship with him. And if you've yet to do that, I would encourage you in a moment when I pray to receive Jesus into your life. It will be nothing that you'll ever regret. You'll never regret that moment, knowing that he will be with you through the ups and downs of life, that he will set you free and heal you, restore you, forgive you. He's here for that right now, today. And also, Alpha starts this coming Wednesday. We had a lovely taster evening last Wednesday. It's not too late. If you'd like to find out who this Jesus is that offers so much and gave himself, come next Wednesday. We even have a Cantonese speaking group. If you're here from Hong Kong, you're thinking, well, I would come, Si, but I don't think I can get to grips with the speed that you speak. Worry not. We've got you covered. Next Wednesday, come and chat to me afterwards. We've got some QR codes out here as well if you want to sign up. We'd love to chat to you more about who Jesus is. For the time being, why don't we stand and we pray together?